Saturday. Sorry I'm a few minutes late when I said I'd be here, but here I am. In the studio on a Saturday. Oh, hello, hello. Who do we have in the house? Holler at me. Let me know where you're watching from. Oh, pardon. Alright, so basically what I'm going to be doing here, so I've been working on this song for like an industrial kind of song, like I guess I would put it in the same vein as like 9 Inch Nails kind of stuff, right? So I'm going to continue working on that, and pardon me while I plug my charger in. Sorry about that. A little bit behind the 8 ball today, but that's okay. But, so I've actually been doing this track, and I've done it mostly on lives. Now, the last time I think I recorded some guitars, and, you know, the recording of instruments is kind of, you know, once you've seen one done, it's kind of the same thing over and over for live instruments, just with a different instrument, right? And there wasn't a ton happening as far as, like, writing beyond that initial, the guitar lines I did. So I actually went ahead and laid down a few more things, just some auxiliary guitar tracks and a little bit of bass as well. Sorry, it's morning here, so I'm kind of not. I've been up for a while, but I'm still. Sometimes my wake up process is a little slow. If I'm rubbing my eyes, it's all that is. But anyway, so what I wanted to do today is take what I have, which I actually have quite a bit sitting in this file right now, this audio file, and I want to do a baseline mix and then get into the more finer details of mixing. You know, start getting this thing where it's going to be at, and my goal. So my goal today is to basically get a mix done, a decent enough mix that I can record vocals to it. Now the vocals I will not be doing on a live video for a couple reasons. One, I'm going to be in the headphones, so you're not going to hear any of the music that I'm singing to. And two, because believe it or not, when I record vocals, I get very self-conscious. Yeah, and I'm just a little bit bashful. I generally speaking, I don't have people around when I'm writing or recording vocal lines. It's not even that, like, if somebody said something critical, like, I couldn't deal with it, but I'm a big believer in facilitating the creative process as much as I can. I don't want any kind of, like, anything weird on the line, you know. What's the best way to say this? I just don't like to I don't like to have any risk of anything that might dampen my creative flow, I guess is what I would call it. And for whatever reason, when it comes to guitar and bass and all that kind of stuff, that's not a problem. But when it comes to my voice, I get a little touchy, so I like to get, not touchy, but I just like to, because it's different when it's like your body is the instrument versus you're playing an instrument that's exterior from you. So it's a very personal thing, and I like to really just be independent and just on my own and isolated when I do that, or with a producer if I'm working with a producer, you know? Anyway, that was a whole lot of explanation. Again, whoever is in the house, if you're in here, say hey, tell me where you're watching from. You know, let me know if you've been watching these videos. Have you been digging them? Have they been helpful? You know, if there's something you want to see on future videos, let me know. I'm trying to be more regular on getting my videos out. The last few months have been pretty insane, and then also, you know, a couple weeks ago I had food poisoning and I was like literally out of commission for 5-6 days straight, which sucked, but it also kept me off of doing video, you know. So, and obviously I don't necessarily expect to do all of this kind of video. I mean, I can do live performance videos, I can do gear reviews. I mean, anything you guys might want to see, just throw it down there. And as soon as I can get on it, I'll get on it. The other thing that I'm considering doing, by the way, as long as I have the floor here, the other thing I'm considering doing is actually rebooting my cooking channel, which is kind of it's a cooking channel, but there's parallels to me between cooking and music, so I kind of consider it like a parallel thing that I do. That being said, I do keep it separate as like a separate channel because it's different enough that I wouldn't necessarily put it on this channel. But if that's something that people want, if that's something you guys want, drop me a comment, let me know, because if there's people want that, then I'll do everything I can to provide that. I am in a new house from when I was doing it before, so I would have a whole new setup, and I have to figure that out, but I'm happy to do that if people want it. All right, enough jabbering. On to the music. I'm going to turn the camera around so you can see the screen. Come on. There it is. All right, so now, this is my edit window. So this is where when I'm recording things, that's where you see all the music coming up and being played. So right now, here's what I'm going to do. Because I've already kind of played around with a mix on this, but I want to take you through doing the mix, right? Because that to me is a pretty important thing. So right now, I have like my instruments mixed among themselves, which I think I did that on the video. Like I kind of got a little bit of the flavor out, maybe not on the guitars, but I know the drums I already mixed on video, so I'm not going to remix them. I'm just like within the drums themselves. And also just for anyone that hasn't been watching, so what I do is I'll take my drums, for example, and I'll have them all routed to one track so that I can control the overall volume of the drum kit. And then within this here, I will mix just the drums with each other so it sounds like a nice balanced drum kit, right? So I've done that. So I'm going to turn that all the way down. These here are my patches. Or yeah, like my patches, my synthesizer, my program stuff. I mean, the drums are programmed too, but these are like noise programming essentially, or like synthesizer, that kind of stuff. And these have all also been, I mean, they're not really mixed within themselves because they're kind of their own thing, but I'm going to drop them all the way down. Because again, I've taken the file that I had and I've saved a copy so I can do this mix. Hey Libby, how you doing? So I'm going to drag these all down so we're starting from scratch, right? And you can kind of, you're going to see the mixing process now, right? Now here's my dirty rhythm guitars, the electric guitars that have like a really dirty, like the main guitar line, right? So I recorded a left and a right side to that, like a double take basically, and then I pushed one take all the way to the left, one take all the way to the right. Now what I did in the interim since the last time I was on is I did record another guitar that's a center channel. I'm going to show you that really quick. Actually, just so you can see what I did. And what this does is it gives me a little bit more color to the guitar, a little more depth to it, and give a bit more of the sound spectrum in there, right? So, just to show you what I got. So here's the guitars, and then I'm going to bring in the center channel, right? So you're just hearing guitars now. And then I got this here. And that's what you're hearing in the center, that. And that's just to create a little bit of, not an ambient effect, but kind of, I think of it as like a hectic effect, right? And that's something I did just to kind of have, just to mix that in, have that to like create a little bit of interest in the music. And this is one thing with mixing where this really comes into play. You got all this stuff going on, right? So I'm just going to go up and down here. This is like all this information, all this sound happening here. If all of this was just going on all the time, there'd be no dynamic to the song. It'd be boring as AF. And that, if you think about stuff on the radio, things that you like, there's a dynamic. There's soft parts, there's loud parts, there's parts with more instruments, parts with less instruments. And kind of the name of the game is making it so that throughout the entirety of this track, there's enough change happening that it holds people's interest to the end, right? Because, I mean, if somebody listens to your track and they click off of it after 10 seconds, well, that's not very useful, But if you can get them to listen for a minute, minute and a half, the whole track, which is only a 2.5 minute track, that's pretty good. I mean, that's really then you've done your job, right? As a producer and as a mixing engineer particularly, but even just as an artist. So I turned my guitars all the way down. I'm also going to turn this center channel guitar that I recorded all the way down. Now, one of the other things I recorded, I call these fans. What they literally are held chords that I just played, and I'll show you what I mean by that. I'm going to solo these, and I did a left, a right, and a center, and this is, again, something to just add some depth. It's not something that'll be loud in the mix. It's just something that will add some thickness. So here's what those sound like. See, there's not a lot of rhythm. They're just held. So what I'll do is bring those up in little bits just to give a little more, again, thickness to the downbeats on the guitar so that you can actually hear the attack. You can really hear when the guitar gets hit. You'll just hear it a little bit better. It makes it a little more audible. I'm going to actually take the two. So I'm going to show you the two different things I did there too. So I got my left and my right doing this. And then I got my center one. I went an octave up doing this, I think. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. Here's my left and my right. And then here's my center. And just to give you a sense, I'm going to actually bring all of these things up together, just the guitars. So you can kind of hear, now that you've heard the parts, you can kind of get a sense of what this all sounds like together. So I'm going to turn down this extra guitar part really quick. I'm going to bring up just the main guitars. Whoa, that's loud. So there's that. And now check this out. It's a little thicker, a little more dynamic, not dynamic range, but sonic range, right? So, okay, good. So I got those. Now I also recorded a bass track. And what I do with my bass, so you'll see I actually have a bass and then a bass effects track. So I record the bass and I treat it a certain way, but then I also have a copy of the bass line sent over to this other track that's got some effects on it that helps to give a little more. Historically, bass is a very difficult instrument to mix. It's very low end, it's very muddy, and it's just one of the harder instruments to have in the mix but still be able to really hear what it's doing. So what I do is the side chain, this extra copy of the bass track, is treated differently, and I'll kind of show you that a little bit. So here's the bass line. Just no muting. Oh, I see. Let's mute that. So here's the bass line just by itself. I do have, well, here, I'll turn off all the stuff I have going on right now, just so you can hear the dry, unaffected bass line. Okay? Okay? So the first thing I do with the bass is I have these things I do. I have a compressor, which what a compressor does is it basically takes the bass sound and squashes it so that when you play an instrument live, it's not perfect. Sometimes you hit the guitar or the bass a little harder, sometimes you hit it a little softer, so you have these points where you have spikes in the volume or where the volume is extra low. What compression does is it basically normalizes the volume a bit, not so much that it kills your dynamic, but enough that it brings everything into a certain range, which then makes it easier to hear and to mix, right? Then the other thing I have here is I have it going through a bass amplifier simulator, right? So actually here, let's do this. I'm going to play the bass. I'm going to turn the compression on and off so you can hear what that does. You can hear it a little better, right? Now we're going to do the guitar amp, the bass amp rather, and see what that does. It makes it a little bit, not harsher, but a little bit more of the high end is coming through. So it makes it cut through a little bit better is the whole point of that. Now here's what I have here is an EQ, an equalization. This takes the sound spectrum of the bass and it takes some things out and it accentuates some things. So what I'll do here, just to kind of, here, I'll show you, I'm going to take this one off and I'll show you what I'm doing. So, because I want to save that. But basically what you do when you're doing equalization settings, first of all, on the bass, there's certain things that I just am not going to need. Like a bass is a low instrument. So the high end of the sound spectrum I don't even need. So I'm just going to cut that out up to a certain point where you're just not, if there's any signal happening on the bass line, it's probably noise, right? So we don't need it. Now I'm going to play the bass and just kind of see, I'm going to do what's called sweeping for different frequency ranges and see if something sounds good, you bump it up. If it sounds bad, you take it out, right? So here we go. So that right there, for what I'm doing, sounds like something I want. For a more industrial track, I want the bass to really cut and be a little on the harsher side, still filling out the low end, of course, but giving me a little bit of bite. So I'm going to accentuate that. Now that's extra accentuated, so I'm going to bring it down. See, if you look at this gain right down here, this is increased from, okay, actually let me do this. So this line right here, this flat line, this is like just the signal coming in as it is, unaffected by anything, right? So what happens is when I sweep, I turn certain frequencies way up so I can really, really hear what they're doing. But I don't want them that accentuated. I don't want them turned up 17 decibels above their normal, right? In that frequency. So what I'm going to do is pull it back. So it's pull back. So I've boosted just that one frequency spot about 4.5 decibels, which is a pretty decent boost. That's a healthy boost, right? So let's see what else we like here or don't like. I kind of like that. It's giving it a little rumble. Again, I have it boosted a lot, so I'm going to pull that back a bit. And I'm only going to boost that probably like 3 decibels. Not a ton. It'll just give it a little more low end. Let's check these other frequencies to see if anything sounds good, bad, or otherwise, right? Now that right there I'm not loving. That just sounds harsh, right? So I'm going to pull that out a little bit. I'm going to pull that down by about 3 decibels. I don't like to do deep cuts really because it just makes things sound silly. And then we'll do one more check with this frequency here. Yeah, the 3K frequency, this right here, this area right here, commonly when you have unpleasantness to your ear in the high end, that's usually in that frequency range. So I'm going to pull some of that out as well. So good. So we got a nice, so we're shaping our bass right here. So I'm going to now check one other thing because I want my volume. This is my volume of the signal going in. This is what it's coming out after it's been affected. I want these equal. I'm not trying to change the overall volume of the track here, right? Just want to get those about equal, that's close enough. So now let's see what we got. So this is without any equalization. And now with. Subtle, but it's a little bit nicer of a tone. Some of the harshness is cut out. Some of the low end's accentuated. It still has some bite to it. So I like that. So let's see how, I'm curious actually, how close was I to what was up here? Pretty close. Pretty darn close. I did a little more pulling out on the high end, but that's okay. So I'm going to actually use the one that we got, that we just did. And then this right here, so I'm still hearing a little bit of like, in the low end, again, this is a muddy instrument, you know? And I'm still hearing that the bass is a little bit, it just sounds muddy to me in the low end. And in the frequencies that I want, it's still just a bit on the muddy side. So I'm going to use a multi-band compressor. What this is, it's like this up here. It's a type of compressor where you can focus in and only do adjustments on one of the frequency areas, not the whole track overall. So it only comes in and activates when you when certain frequencies are happening, right? So right now it's off. I've already done this right? So right now I have compression happening in between 200, in a pretty wide range actually, between 250 and 4K, which, you know, and a little bit actually on the um, low end. Actually, mostly. So here's what we got. So we got right here in the high and right here in the very low. We just got a little bit of compression happening, right? So, and you can actually solo these things and hear what they sound like, right? So, long story short, I have certain frequencies where I just want to actually control the sound a little more. That's what this is for. So here is without. Oh, whoops. There we go. There we go. Without. And with. You can hear the rumble on the low end is controlled a little more. So that's got a little bit more of like the sound that I want, right? Now, we have this whole other channel here where we have what's called a send. What this does is it takes a copy of this bass track and sends it here to this strip here, this channel. Now, there's two ways to send that you can send something. You can send it as it is here with all of this effect on it, or you can do a pre-fader send, which means you're sending a copy of the raw file unaffected here. For these purposes, I'm not doing a pre-fader send. I'm sending a copy after everything's been sent through these effects. So now, I've got a couple things happening here. One, I have boosted EQ in one particular place on the bass, which actually I'll show you that first. I'm going to unmute. So first of all here, I'm going to just mute everything, right? Or take all the effects rest. You can just hear that there's a copy coming through. So here it is. So right now you're just getting a carbon copy of this here. So first thing, we're going to take the EQ, we're going to boost right around the 500 hertz, which is just, you know, it's a mid-range frequency, and it's something that I picked out as wanting a bit more accentuation just on this parallel channel. Now, by the way, this channel here that I created, the purpose of it is to do things to the bass that specifically help it stand out more without necessarily increasing the volume of it. And this is a thing with mixing that's very important, is that something standing out in a track is not, it's oftentimes not about volume. I mean, volume is a part of it. But if you have things where you have frequencies that are very muddy, or you have things where you have two instruments that are both occupying pretty much the same sonic space, you have what's called cancellation. They can cancel each other out. So these are the problems that I'm trying to handle right now, so that I can have everything sitting in the mix nicely and not having to constantly turn volumes up, because it just makes your mix sound like shit when you do that, versus just actually tailoring and forming your sounds of all your individual instruments to make them what you want them to be, right? So, with that being said, here's the first thing I did. I did an EQ boost at 500. So let's see what that sounds like. Here's without. Here's with. Subtle. It's not a big boost either. I might actually boost a little more on that. And actually, let me see. I almost want to check. I want to double check my work here. This is something I did last time I was in here. Not on the video, but when I was just recording. So let me just run through this again, sweep, and make sure this is the frequency I want to accentuate. I think I want to go for the 1K. The reason is it's going to cut through more. And the purpose of this channel is not to create a ton more of like like the bass tone, the general bass tone I want is here. This channel is more to get the attack of the bass and make it so it stands out in the mix. That's my purpose for this channel. There's going to be some coloring of the sound no matter what that's going to happen, but that's not the primary purpose of this channel. I'm trying to just make it so I can mix my bass in, have it stand out without having to crank the volume and making my mix a big muddy mess. So let's listen again without. And with. So a little better as far as attack goes. And then the other thing we got here, so I have a few effects here. Now, so three things. One, I have a compressor on here, which is another, this is a different compressor, but they all basically do the same thing, where it basically takes the sound, squishes it down, and makes it so that it just is able to mix easier. But what I'm actually going to do here, though, I just realized I want to do something else. This is a little trick. So we have our equalized sound here on this channel. So now what I actually want to do is take a different compressor. This is called the Bomb Factory. And it basically is a model of a very famous processor made by a company called UA. And what I'm going to do is depress all of these buttons, which is going to compress the hell out of the sound. I'm going to turn up my input to about half and turn down my output to about half. And the whole point of what this is going to do is it's going to squish the hell out of this sound. And the reason that what that's going to do is make it so we're really just focusing on the attack. It's going to take out a lot of the low. The highs are not necessarily... Anyway, it's going to take the sound and it's going to narrow it down so it actually just really is more attack-centric. It's going to take out a lot of the low-end rumble. So here's without. Here's with. I actually want to even, let's see. Shorten that a little bit. And that's fine. I'm going to actually drive the input in a little more so it's hitting the meter harder. It'll compress it harder. Let's try this. There we go. So I like that. And then back to here. So I took this compressor off. We're not actually going to need it. Now what I do have on here is an overdrive. It's kind of like a type of distortion, a light distortion. And then this is a type of chorus pedal called a doubler. So it's going to give it a little bit of sonic breath. It's going to, choruses tend to accentuate the high end as well, obviously depending on how you set them up. But to hear what this is like, so here's without these things. Here's with. I'm actually going to turn the distortion down a little bit. And I'm going to bring this up a little bit in my sound. Let's hear that. Okay, good. Now, by itself, this is going to sound a little funky, right? This is obviously, we're listening to this totally out of context. Hearing it in context is what matters, right? So we're going to get there. But for right now, I'm just going to turn my bass all the way down. And right now I have a balance. I've basically done a mix between my bass channels, and then I've created a group with them so that they will, when I change one, it will proportionately change the other. So right now I'm just going to bring these both down. Now, one other thing I want to point out is that on my guitars that I didn't go over this. I did do a compressor on each individual guitar track. And then I also used an EQ. Similarly to what I did with the bass, I did some EQ sweeps, pulled some things out. Now on guitars, the whole point of a guitar, they really capture and shine in what are called the mid-range frequencies, like right here over to about here is kind of like the sweet spot for guitars. So I took out a bunch of my low end because we don't need the low end volume, we don't need the extra mud. And I also took out some of the high-end because we don't really depend on the guitars for high-end sparkle necessarily, at least not dirty guitars. If I was going to try to capture some high-end off of a guitar, I'd probably do it with a clean guitar. but we're not doing that. So what I've done is accentuated the mid-range right around the 500 to 600 mark. I've got a little boost here and a little bit of a cut here at the 3K kilohertz mark, because that's, again, a very harsh frequency in most cases. I'm going to narrow that one a little bit, actually, so it's not as wide of a cut. So I just want to show you, though, what that's going to do, what these moves have done. So the compression I'm not going to worry about showing you, but the EQ specifically, I want to show you. And I've done something. See, now with this other guitar, though, with the fans, because these are more about capturing the attack of the guitar and less about giving it more body. I mean, it colors the sound a bit, but it's not really about boosting the mid. I took out more of the mid and I boosted it around the high end of like where the guitar range is good, is nice, you know. And I did that because I specifically was going for the attack on these guitars. So I'm gonna isolate these things, specifically the EQ moves that I did. I'm going to start with the main guitars so you can hear what I did there with EQ. Why am I? Oh, that's why. That's without the EQ. Here's with. You can hear it just became a more focused sound, right? Now, with these other guitars, here's what I did. So here's without the EQ. Where do they start? There we go. So that's without. Here's with. So it's really just focus, again, very focused, but focused more on the attack, less on the body, right? So good. I think that about gets us to the point where we're ready to start doing what's called the baseline mix. Now, typically I would do this before doing even any effects. That's one of my things. It's a discipline for me, really, because I have things I know I'm going to want to do on some of these tracks. So like already I have like an EQ on my snares to kind of tame them a little bit. I did that last time as well, pulled out some harsh frequencies on the snare. But even for me, I'm getting better all the time, and this is pretty light compared to what I would usually have already done. Also, too, one thing I did with the bass specifically is I have a general bass sound that I like, that I know it works really well, you know? Like things that I just do with the bass, and I tend to kind of tweak based off of them from prior sessions. So what I did was copied the information on what I did with my bass from another session, from another song, brought it into this session, and then I've been working with that. So these effects were imported in anyway, right? So fine. So to start out, I'm going to start out with our drums and seeing, I mean, I would bring those up. And by the way, one thing you want to look at here is my mastering meter. This is, when all is said and done, all the sound gets brought into this final channel. This is what goes out to my speakers in terms of the volume and everything. So what you want to do is you want to make it at the mixing level so that you're getting this, so you're probably up between like 10 and 20 somewhere. Kind of 15 is a good space to end up with your mix before you send it in for a master. Even up around like 10 is fine. So the drums are going to be a lot of that, because the drums, there's a lot happening there. It's a hitting instrument. It's a very dynamic and very loud instrument. So let's see here. I think that's a pretty good spot for the drums. So we're up to about like 25, 30 there, right? It's quite a bit. I mean, the drums are taking up a lot of the headroom, right? So we're going to start there. Now, the next thing I'm going to bring in is my bass, right? So let's start bringing that in with the drums. Okay, good. It's a good starting point, I think. Keep in mind, too, what we're doing now, this is going to change. This is not like the final end-all be-all mix. we're getting ourselves to a starting point to start approaching this, right? By the way, for anyone watching, any questions at all are very welcome. Drop them in the comments. I am watching my comments, and I'm definitely happy to answer any questions you have. Also, too, while I am very experienced at mixing, I'm not as experienced at teaching people how to mix, so this is kind of like a new thing for me. So if there are things you like about the way I'm explaining things, please tell me. If there are things you hate about the way I'm explaining things, please tell me. Because I would love to get better and better at helping other people do this stuff. It's kind of a pay it forward thing for me. I learned to produce and record and mix by other people being willing to help and teach me. Two in particular, one is Jim Jeffrey, who is a very good friend of mine, that incredible musician. He and I were in a band together at one point. That was when we were in the band together. He just started showing me stuff because I was interested and he was willing, and it was really, he didn't have to do that, so I really appreciate the hell out of that. And then another friend of mine, Hawk Heimdelsman, who is a producer here in LA, also a fantastic multi-instrumentalist, very talented individual. And again, just always willing to help, answer questions, show me stuff. When we've done a project here and there together, we were never necessarily in like a band together, but we've just musically, we've worked together a lot and we're friends. He's a great guy and also a fantastic producer. So if you ever need producers or musicians, by the way, these guys are guys to hit up, so let me know. I can put you in touch with them if you ever need anything like that. But they're just incredible guys that were just willing to show me the ropes and show me what was going on. The other person too that was really great, and at the time I wasn't necessarily, Jim was actually helping me around this time, but Billy Sherwood, who produced my song 121 Days. He's a incredible individual, incredible musician, singer, bass player, guitarist, drummer. He's currently the bass player for Yes, to give you a sense of his level of chops and proficiency. Like, you can't be in Yes without being pretty incredible, and he certainly is. And also just a fantastic guy. And, I definitely asked him questions in the studio, and he was very into, me being there when he was doing stuff, and really me just being there to absorb and learn. And it was really cool, and he was incredible to work with. And just by working with him and seeing his workflow, seeing how he approaches vocals, seeing his recording process was so invaluable. So I want to pay that forward, and that's what a lot of what these videos are. I mean, sure, they're entertaining and interesting for anyone that just is interested in what I'm doing, but also too, it would mean a lot to me if it was helpful to even one person, and with that, hence my question, if there's anything that you're digging about how I'm explaining this, let me know. If there's anything that you're not liking that you would like me to do better or differently, let me know, because I want to make this as useful as possible to as many people as possible, right? All right. With that being said, let's move on to bringing our guitars in, shall we? So, good. We'll start with these guys here, the main rhythm guitar line. Turn this thing down a little bit. That's a little much. But overall, pretty happy with that. I think the drums can come up a little bit. Now the bass is getting lost here. That's interesting. Guitars down a little bit. Oh yeah, that's right. I did cut those guitars out, didn't I? Huh. It's funny, the things you forget you did. Let's start from the top here, actually. See where we're at. Okay, good. So now what I want to do is bring in these dirty fans to color in my my rhythm guitar a little bit, so let's see what that's like. So our dirty fans are here. Let's try this. That's a pretty good starting point. Let's see here. Also, too. Oh, I didn't really show you what I had going on with these dirty fans, by the way. So along with the EQ, I have a distortion on here. I have an EQ within the pedal board that I have here that I use to tailor the sound, and then I have a little reverb on here, not a huge amount. And then the other thing too is that on this one part here, this where did it go? On this thing here, so I have two things. I have this vibro pedal, this tremolo thing, which is what gives it that, you'll hear versus. And then I have a little echo. The reason I did that is to give it a little bit of tail. There's not a lot of echo on there, but you'll hear if I don't have that, it sounds like this. And specifically the end is what I was concerned about. See how it just kind of cuts off? But what the delay does is this. Little dimension, but more importantly, it's going to give it a little bit of a tail when the wave ends off, when the sound ends off. So, subtle, but it just give it a little bit of an end, you know? So good. So we got that. Now, going back to where we're at with our mix. I'm going to let this part play. This is our bass solo section. I think my bass needs to come up. Also, too, this is a little weird. I don't know why that happened, but I lost my bass proportion. Let me fix that really quick. There we go. That's more like it. So let's hear that in context. There we go. Anyway, so that gives you a sense where we're at now. So those are our main, those are like the drums are programmed, and then our main live instruments are bass and guitar stuff, right? Now, so that's what I would call a decent baseline mix for those things, but we still have all of these other programmed sound effect sort of things that we want to work in, right? So let's take a look at those, because those are definitely part of the baseline mix. Also, one thing I just want to point out is that on our meter here, on our master meter of where we're at, so we're just pushing we're sitting right about between 20 and 15. So we're already pushing into the range a little bit here, right? Which is fine. I mean, I'm not too worried about it. I kind of expected that. And we are going to do other things to tailor this down. This is just a starting point, right? So good. So going to our ambient and effecty kind of stuff, right? Here's what we got. So first, we're going to take these one at a time. And I've already done, by the way, the other thing I did, and this is a little quick lesson in having to do with mixing in what's called panning. I went over this, I think, in my second video. I forget which, but these knobs here, these control, if you think of like a stage. Actually, here, let me draw this out. This might be an easier way to explain this. So if you think, let's see, I got a pen here. I'm going to draw a little something out. So here is a picture of a stage, essentially. So you got the front of the stage, the back of the stage, the right of the stage, left of the stage. If you think of this knob here, the top center here is like the front and center of the stage. All the way to the left is the left of the stage. All the way to the right is the right of the stage. And then your volume knob takes you to the front of the stage more or more toward the back of the stage. That's the way I think of volume and panning. Is like you're if thinking of it spatially, putting things more forward or backward, more left or more right, simply. Now, when I do panning, I tend to take an LCR approach, which means left, center, right. What that essentially means is that all of my parts are, for the most part, going to be either all the way to the left, all the way to the right, or up the center. It doesn't mean that everything is, and if something needs to be played around with to make it fit into the sonic space better, I will certainly play with things, but that's usually where I start. So if you look at my drums here, my kick, my snares, those are all in the center. My hi-hats, which is my cymbal basically, is all the way to the right. And then I bring in my drums. I take my overall drum sound and make that, this is what's called a stereo pan, a stereo channel. So this is like, each one of these is like all the way to the left, all the way to the right, right? I bring this up to narrow the drum sound. So it's kind of like I look at a stage and think of a stage where like the drummer isn't across the entire stage. He's in one narrow, he's in a section of the stage. So kind of creating that space, right? And then with each of these types of pads, these effects I have, I push them all the way to the right, all the way to the left, or one is up the center, just based on what I think I want. Guitars, I have dead left and right, and then up the middle on both, and then the overall sound of the guitars is pushed hard left and hard right. And my bass is going right up the middle, which is pretty traditionally, that's pretty normal, right? Again, all of these can be tweaked. This is just where I start from. Now, once again, and I apologize for all the sidetracking, but going back to our synthesizer-ish stuff. Let's see what we got here. So we got, first of all, we have a bunch of stuff we don't need. This is another thing that's important, is keeping things neat. Is you want to get rid of anything, any information you don't need, sonically speaking, right? Because there might be a sound artifact, something there you don't want, that you just don't necessarily see or hear. So this is a little bit of a cleanup thing. I should have honestly done this before, but whatever. It's a good learning opportunity, right? And there are other ways to clean it up. This is just, for me, it's like a discipline, really, just making sure that I always do that. almost done here. Again, thank you for your patience. But this is, again, a good lesson learned. This is part of just staying really organized in what you're doing. And all I'm, again, doing is just cutting out essentially dead space with nothing in it, just on the off chance that there's some kind of weird, microscopic but yet audible sound happening in these spaces that I don't want. And that is the simplicity of what we're doing. Okay. So now that we got that all tidied up, again, sorry I didn't have that done earlier, we are going to start mixing in all our synthesizer-ish stuff. So here we go. Starting with this, what do we got here? Let's see what this even is. Okay, cool. So that's like a helicopter-y sound, kind of similar to the guitar that I have. Okay, what else do we got? This guy. Another, okay. So we're layering the hell out of this like kind of helicopter sound. And then what else do we have? This noise pad is what? Oh, okay, that's that thing. That's our intro outro thing. Okay, good. What do we got here? Kind of a chorusy thing, like a choir voice sound thing. Here's this. That's kind of cool. And then what's this? Oh, I know what this is. It's yeah. Okay, good. And then we have this abuse pad thing, which I know what that is, but let's do it anyway. Yeah. Okay, good. So let's start from the top. Let's mix these two guys in. All right. So we're just going to start playing the track where these come in, and we're going to start bringing them in and seeing what they sound like. So here we go. So let's see what it's like without them. Let's see what it's like with them. It's a little more excited, a little more it's like, it's funny, it's not, because they're not creating notes like pitches per se, but there's just more of a sonic dynamic to it there. It gives it a little bit more of a, like, creates a feeling, right? It's like setting a mood, if that makes sense. Yeah, so I dig that. Actually, I dig that a lot. And then let's see, newly, by the way, if you just tuned in, if you weren't here at the beginning, drop a comment, let me know you're here, holler at me, let me know where you're watching from. And again, if you dig what I'm doing, let me know. If you're not liking something I'm doing the way I'm going or something, let me know, because I definitely want to get better at teaching people this stuff, just because pay it forward sort of a thing, right? So good. Next thing, let's go to, actually, let's skip a little bit. Let's go to these choir things. Let's bring those in. is, yeah, I'm going to change my panning around a little bit on this. Let's do this. So these are now on the same side. Yeah, I like that a lot better. So it's creating a bit of a mood again. None of this is meant to be a main instrument, right? Let's listen to that again. I actually am going to do a compressor on this one here because what's happening, you'll hear. It gets a little lower there. Like, it's kind of interesting because with the program thing you wouldn't expect that, but it does actually get a little bit lower. So I am going to use a compressor on this to even out that sound a little bit. And let's see what we got here. Close. It's a little better, and I also put the input in heavy, so it's going to make it a little bit warmer of a sound, a little more driven. Let's see how that sounds in context. Yeah. Still a little bit low on that one part, though. I think I might just go in and boost that. This is what's called automation, by the way, where I'm going to go in and actually boost something and have it be like, it's called automation because it happens automatically, right? And what I'm going to do is simply that. Let's see how that sounds. That is much better. The other thing too we're going to do is, this is another cleanup point. I'll show you in a second, but we're going to copy and paste that all the way to the end. Let's do it with this one because there's a little bit of a tail on it, so I'm going to do this. Let's try this in context now. See what she looks like. Much better. By the way, just to clarify, what I'm actually changing here is the waveform. This is called the clip gain. It literally just takes this waveform. Clip gain is, if you look at this, the amount of gain is the amount of volume this clip inherently has. And all we're doing is taking this wave and making it bigger. So it's got a little bit more volume range, so to speak, but it's not as sharp of a change in my observation as doing an actual volume adjustment. So I just did that. It's just a little bit more subtle of a way of making something stand out. So I'm happy with that. Now, one thing I do need to do, though, if you notice here, you'll hear a little pop between, right, with the, where this little where this seam is here. You hear a little pop. Watch this. That's not good. Because what that does is that'll show up in the mix, and then it's just sloppy. So this is another cleanup point. So I'm going to go ahead and just do this really quick. Now, you'll hear that pop shouldn't be there. Nice and smooth, like a baby's butt. It's what I like. So let's listen to that now. I love that. Okay, now I'm going to revisit my mix, make sure that I'm still happy with where that's sitting now that I've fixed that volume issue. I think it's even a little hot now. I think I like where that is at the moment. We'll play with it a little more later, I'm sure, but that's a pretty good starting point. So, let's see what we got left. We've got this guy, this noise pad, or not this, I'm sorry, this. Which... that whole thing. Let's see where that sounds like. Kind of like that. I think I just got lucky there. But let's see how it sounds in the beginning, because that same thing occurs in the beginning. Yep, I'm digging that. Okay, that was easy. And now we have this these couple other things here. Let's see. All right, this ambient pad. Let's bring this up. You got a little much. All right, let's try this. This comes in. I want to give it a little lead in so I can hear it in context, right? It's a little bit tough to tell right now. What just happened? Did I lose something? Is that pad? All right, I think I might have accidentally erased something I didn't want to. Let's just take this all the way back. See what I've missed. Huh. So this is something that can happen if you accidentally erase something that you didn't mean to. Not really the end of the world. What I'm going to do is just re-import it. And this is the ambient pad. New track. So not a huge deal. And then what I'm going to do is just swoop this up to here. Get rid of this thing. And now we're good as new. So I knew something was off. So now we're going to fix that, no problem. These are those things that you just kind of, they happen, you know? So now I'm going to go back and retake out all the stuff I don't need. There. Now, let's see what this sounds like in context. Not bad. I'm going to bring it up a little bit. Bring up the kick and the snare a little bit, particularly the kick. Kick, snare a little bit. Let's try that. I'll bring down my hi-hat a little bit. Also, too, here's something I'm going to do. Is I'm going to go to my drum submix, and I'm going to do a little bit of compression and EQ on it. Now, this is something that is just being applied to my drums to just control the sound a little more, and there's some harshness in the hi-hat, but I don't want to necessarily go through and tweak every individual instrument if I don't need to. I can just hit the drums as a whole, right? So I have, let's see here. Got a little starting point here. There's some tweaks I'm going to make. Let's see what this sounds like for compression. Probably turn that down to 3. Now I'm going to do a little bit of an EQ that hits before the compression. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to see about pulling some of that, the harshness of the hi-hats out for starters. So what have I done here now? I boosted my low end a little bit to bring out the kick a bit more, although I'm going to probably shift that a little bit. One thing I want to make sure of, because on my bass here, one of the things with mixing, bass and kick can get in the way of each other if you're not careful. So right now I have my bass boosted at about the 50K, 51 hertz, 50 hertz point, right, to bring up the low end. So what I don't want to do is then also have my kick drum boosted there, because that will then create the problem of, well, they're going to cancel each other, right? Which is good, because I actually have, I'm going to take a little bit of the low out of the bass, like take it down of the kick drum up to about like 40, 50. And I have it boosted at 100 or so, which makes it so it should balance nicely with the kick. So let's see what this sounds like now, or with the bass rather. Let's see what this sounds like now. Okay, cool. So again, baseline mix, we're going to tweak this, but I feel better about that. The cymbal is a little more controlled. It's not as harsh. That's a better drum sound balance and a general balance overall. Now going back here, we still have one more of these effecty things we need to mix in. That's just a thing called abuse, which is this. Which, let's see here. Let's actually try it where it is right now. A little more. A little less, split the difference. I kind of like that where it is. Maybe a touch less because it's kind of harsh. Kind of moving through the mix, playing around with some things right now. What I'm focusing on now is my kick sound, because on the drums the kick sound is a little bit too harsh, so I'm playing with that. I think I got it to a good point. Okay, good. So this I would consider to be a pretty good baseline mix for the track. Again, baseline mix being this is a starting point, you know? I'm going to do a bunch of other stuff to this track, you know, minutia stuff, like little things here and there to help things stand out more. I'm going to go through it a bunch, but this is a really good starting point. And if I had to take this track, record a vocal and a guitar to it, and then send it out tomorrow, and I didn't have any time to mix it, and I could just do a little quick master on it, I mean, I think this would be a good demo mix. You know, it's not final, but it represents the song well and gets the idea across, and it's a good starting point. So, okay, good. So one thing I want to do really quick before I go any further is I do want to check anywhere that I've done any kind of edits to make sure these seams here, like I showed you before, I don't want to have any kind of stupid bullshit noise happening. So I'm going to make sure those are all done. And I personally, you know, there are ways to do it faster. I like going through things like this and really just seeing what I got. That's just a preference thing. Sometimes if I'm really in a rush, I'll do you just do Command F if you're on a Mac, and it'll allow you to do that. But since I have the time, I do want to actually go through and check all these things. If there's stuff I can just get rid of, I'll just do that. All right. Oh, I forgot though. Make sure that you take all your groups off before you do that. Otherwise, you're going to end up deleting shit you don't want to delete. Guaranteed. And that's just no fun. And again, we're just doing this to make sure we don't have any silly issues with like pops and clicks and annoying crap like that. This is the tedious, less fun part of the job, but incredibly important nonetheless, because the little pops and clicks and crap like this, you know, for anyone that's paying attention, if you're trying to like shop your music somewhere, for example, get someone to take it and place it somewhere, or you want to have it be a demo for someone to listen to for an artist to use, it just doesn't sound professional to have all that crap in your mix. So you'd be doing yourself quite the disservice by not having that handled, to say the least. Now with the program stuff, it's a little bit less concerning because it's programmed. So there shouldn't be imperfections in it unless you've done, like we did before, some edits where you've copied and pasted some things. Then yes, you really do need to pay attention to this even with your programmed stuff, just to make sure that in the process of editing things, you didn't create an unintended noise effect of some sort. Which, as we've seen, can and does happen. You know, and you want to keep these edits as low profile as possible. Like I'm not doing a big edit here. Keeping it very, very low profile. And what these are called crossfades, or if it's just the end of a track, it's just called a fade. And it's a minute thing that just basically makes it so that your edited sections fade into each other instead of having this harsh cutoff, which is where you get your pop from. We don't like the pop. Okay, good. We're looking good here. The other reason I like doing it this way versus doing the Command F is that if in the process of setting these tracks up you've done any longer fades or any kind of edits that or have fades in them, you'll lose them when you do a blanket fade, you know. So I generally speaking, that's just one of the other reasons I really prefer doing it this way, even though it is more work. But also too, it's like I have a passion for what I do and I really want the track to come out as well as it can. So to me, that's part of that is just really loving what I do, and this is part of the job, you know. It's part of why I love it, is the amount of care and detail work you do with your music. It's important, you know. Definitely a very good thing to, you know, even if you get to a point where you don't want to do it that way anymore, I still recommend, you know, and this was the way that I learned when I was working with Jim Jeffrey. This is one of the things he had me do, is you go through and you do these fades, these little things that even though they're small, if you don't do them, you know, it makes a difference in your sound. It really just gives you an appreciation for the craft. Like, this is part of the craft, you know. So we're just checking, making sure everything is exactly as it should be. And guitars, it looks like I did a pretty good job on. Alrighty. And obviously, as I'm going through, even, you know, there are many points where I'll just, yeah, I can, if I hear something, I'll just go through and fix it. But if I can just be thorough right from the get-go, it just makes life so much easier. Yeah. You know, like going back, like see this little fade here. If I did a Command F on this, like watch. See, I lost. It altered what I had, which I don't want. So, there we go. On to the next set of guitars. Looking good. Looking good. Good. And by the way, what I'm doing, if I didn't have a fade here, you'll see. I'll show you. So if there's no fade here, you'll see this little prompt come up here. Like if I click here now, it'll put the fade in. Or if I'm down here, if I have two next to each other, it'll do a crossfade, right? Or if you just have the one and you hit crossfade, they'll still just do a regular fade for you. Because you can only crossfade when you have things to crossfade into each other. That's just elementary. Alrighty. Doing good, getting there, getting there. Again, this is all stuff that I typically would have done as I went, you know. And honestly, I mean, I think when I was working on this stuff, I was just kind of a little, not rushed, but I do want to get this track out. And, you know, I sometimes have limited time to work in the studio on my own stuff, depending on what's going on. So, but it kind of works out because it's good for everyone to see this. For sure. Let's see. And by the way, just to show you, if you zoom in real close, these again are very small fades, but they're just taking these little pops and clicks out. And that's really the whole purpose of them. Just to make your mix nice and clean. Now onto my bass, and this is the last thing we'll have to do. And that I think I did pretty well on. Yeah, see, this is all covered. Oh, I missed one. Look at that. And that can happen. Sometimes you just miss one. Okay, good. So now we got everything rolling. So I'm going to give this a listen. And just listen. I'm going to try not to stop it. I'm just going to kind of listen and kind of make some notes of what I hear. Right? And start getting into the nitty-gritty of what are some things that need to change, things that need to be accentuated, things that need to come out, dynamic things I can do. That's the kind of things I'm listening for now. So here we go. Okay, so I got some notes here for sure. So what I noticed here is in the beginning, in the intro, I think I'm going to pull out those auxiliary guitars just for dynamic purposes. My kick drum, I'm still not totally happy with it. It's a little harsh. So I'm going to play around with the EQ on it and then bring it up at that point probably. I'm going to raise the bass up in the bridge a little bit, I think, and maybe pull back the guitars a little bit because it's really meant to be a bit of a bass thing. There will be vocals in there as well at one point, but the bass is supposed to stand out there. My ambient pad came in early, which I'm pretty sure I know why that is. My synthy choir sounds coming in at the end of that instrumental thing with the bass and everything, that's a little low, and then that weird like harsh abuse, it's called, the pad, is still a little bit high. I'm going to EQ tweak that and then play around with the volume of that. So that's, and mind you, I go through a few rounds of moves on these things. Like as I hear things, I'll just, I don't listen once or twice and then I'm done. There's some work that definitely goes into doing a mix. So here's what we got. Let's start at the top. I'm going to pull my auxiliary guitars out of my intro. These dirty fans here. So we're going to make this go away. Those won't come in until here. So here's what I'm going to do. This is just the volume of those all together. So I'm going to take those out. So let's see what that did. That's pretty good. I think I'm going to drop the bass a little bit in volume in that section just because we now have dropped out some guitar. So the bass is coming in a little hot. So I'm not going to drop it like a ton, but I'm going to drop it enough that it won't be quite so in our face. I'll take it down a couple decibels. So we're at 17.9. Minus 17, minus 18, minus 19 point. Let's try that. Yeah, I like that better, for sure. Okay, so that's good. Now the kick. Let's see what we can do with this kick drum. I'm just going to create a little loop here. So if I highlight something and I have selected up here loop playback, it'll just play this over. So I can listen to a certain thing during this part and just kind of play with it. So we're going to go to our kick drum. We're going to put an EQ on here. That's harsh. Okay, good. So I've basically taken out some harsher frequencies. I've added a little bit of attack back in this 600 frequency here. Now, it might not sound incredible right now, but the other thing I'm going to do here to bring back some of the low end is I'm going to actually create a gated thing here for my kick. I'll show you what I mean by that. And this is a trick that I learned from a guy. His name is Graham. He's got a YouTube channel called The Recording Revolution, which I highly recommend checking out. He's a super cool guy, but he's got these incredible tips and tricks on just are very helpful to musicians, to help them with, just them if they want to be producers on their own, really helping the DIY producers get good at what they do. So what I'm going to do is create a signal here. All right, let's see signal generator. And bear with me, it's a trick I've learned recently, so I'm not... I'm not like super duper good at it, right? So right now, that's a tone that we have. Actually, I'm going to bring it down even more. This is just in the low end. So here's what we're going to do with this. We're ahead of this, we're going to put a gate. And let's see here, dynamic. Okay, so now this gate is basically what it's doing is blocking that signal. What we're going to do is create what's called a key input. And what we're going to do here is create a send from the bass drum to that key input. This bus 14. What that does, without getting too technical, is every time this kick drum hits, you are going to hear the signal from this thing that I just created, this channel. So I'm going to solo the kick so you can just hear that. I'm going to take this down. I'm going to turn it off, right? So here's the kick by itself. Now here's the kick with this turned on. Oh, I think I've done it wrong. Hang on. Hang on 1 second. Oh, there we go. I didn't have it engaged. So here. So let me show you that again. So here is the kick by itself. Here it is with the signal generator. So now you're getting some low end added back in via this separate channel. Pretty neat. So I'm going to now mix this separate channel in now that we got our kick. We're going to basically do a remix on our kick. Now what I was doing there was playing around a little bit with the bass and the kick drum, because now that I've added this low end to the kick, there is a little bit going on where there's like a little bit of a fight between the bass and the kick. So I kind of played around with my balance on my kick signal generator, as well as my overall volume of my bass, which I had turned down in this section prior. But now I'm thinking it needed to come back. So I'm just going to double check my bass frequencies. And yeah, I do have, let's see here. I am going to do one auxiliary thing, and I'm going to pull out the 100 frequency on the bass. And the reason I'm going to do that is so it gets a little bit out of the way of the kick drum, so they're not fighting each other as much. So let's do this, because the 100 kilohertz, or the 100 hertz rather, that's where I set up the drums to be. So we're going to take this. We're just going to pull a few decibels out at that range in the bass. See what that did. I think they're pretty well balanced at this point. Hey, Janice. Yay. Janice is lurking and leaning and cooking breakfast. I love that. Janice, thank you for being here. You are awesome. And I hope your breakfast is going to be delicious. And yeah, we're just working on the mix of this song now. I've done some work on it. So yeah, we're knee deep in mixing right now. So we've just been balancing some low end. So like the bass guitar and the kick drum from the drum kit. And here, I'll play through what we got so far. I got some other, actually what I'll do is I got some other mixing moves I'm going to make. And then I will play through this for you, because I actually already did a listen through. So the kick, I feel like, is handled at this point. Okay, we got to go to the bridge, and there's a couple things we need to do here. Now this came in early. This needs to go like... Alright, let's try and make sure where that is. Yeah, it's a hair early. I think that's alright. I don't know. Second guessing myself. Okay, good. Now my bass needs to come up in my bridge. This little section here where it says bass break. All right, so also I'll make sure we got our balance in. Okay, good. We're just going to raise this a couple decibels, not too much. So let's see what that sounds like. Okay, good. I'm going to go back to the kick. It's still sounding a little harsh. So let's bring in a little less of the kick attack, a little more of the kick body. So that's my bridge fixes. I think. Well, sort of. So there's this swell here. Oh, thanks, Janice. Yeah, I tell you, man, that's been one of the hardest parts of the whole process of getting good at this stuff is figuring out how to get the bottom end to sound good. It is not an easy task by any stretch. At least, I mean, I shouldn't say that. It takes, it took me a while to get it down to the point where I could actually do that effectively. That's a better way of putting it. Let's see here now. So we got this here. This needs to fade up a little better. Also, let's see here. So I want the volume of this swell here to be bigger. So what I'm going to try first is this. Let's see what that's like. Okay, that brings me to my last thing. I need to fix these because they're a little harsh and a little loud. So I'm going to do a little simple EQ on this. There it is. And bring that down a little bit. Maybe not quite so much. That's better. That might have even handled the volume, honestly. Yeah, it can be up a little more, I think, actually. Yeah, that's better. Okay, this came in late. What the heck? is happening? Okay, let's get this right. Okay, so good. One other thing I'm going to do before I go further create a reverb track, and this, what it's going to be is going to be my global reverb. Sometimes I'll call it a room verb, or basically it's a reverb that I'm going to basically have everything go through, right? What that will do is make my track more cohesive, you know, because I'm going to do different things to all the different stuff on this track based on what it is, but if everything's going through this reverb track, even a little bit, it just makes it sound like a complete track, you know? So what I'm going to go and do now, well, first I should put a reverb on here, and I think I have a decent preset for this that I've created. Let's see. If not, I'll just create one. So what we're going to do is start from the top on this. And I don't want to have it super reverby, because we already have a lot of low and mid in here, and too much reverb, just the note, will make things muddier than they already are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on this reverb, and then I'm also going to EQ what hits this reverb. So we'll get there. But what I'm going to set up is probably use one of my room reverbs. I'll do a large room. Well, medium room is actually probably better. I'm not going to have any pre-delay. I'm not going to diffuse it too much. I don't want it to get too out of focus, so to speak. And I'm not going to use the high and low frequency pass here. I'm going to do this a different way. But right now we have this reverb going here. And what I'm going to do is make it so that we're not getting as much low end in here. So I'm going to gently roll off from, like, let's say 200 down. And then I'm also going to take out a little bit of the high end, not as much. But I mean above like 14, 15K, I don't really need anything in the reverb channel. That's all I'm going to do. I'm not going to EQ any further. And then what I'm going to do is just start sending some things here. So like I've got my, this is actually really its own thing. So I got my drums. I'm going to do a send. The drums I'm not going to send all the way. I'm not going to do like a full-on, I'm not going to do a full volume send, so to speak. I'm going to send like that much in, just to have a little bit of the drums in the mix. And then I'm going to send all my pads there for sure. Those I will send at full volume. I'm just copying these sends over now. And then for my guitars, I will do what I did with the drums. I don't want, because the guitars can definitely get muddy. So I don't want to, you know, if you send them to the verb, so I want to send a little bit there for cohesion, same with the bass, but I don't want to, actually the bass, I think I might send all of it there. Actually, here's what I'll do with the bass. That's what I'm going to do with the bass. send a full volume of the regular bass, and then also send a little bit of the bass aux, like the effects channel, but not a lot. Now let's see what we got here. So here's the sound without the reverb. Here's the sound with the reverb coming in. See, it's not like a huge difference, but it's just got a bit more cohesive of a sound. I might even pull out some more of my low end on here. Or maybe I'll accentuate some high end. Let me see here. Okay, so now I'm going to play this from the top. Let's see what we got here. I'm going to do another listen through from the top. All right, so not bad. It's actually in a pretty cool place. Now, a couple notes that I just occurred to me to bring up. So when you're doing a mix, the things that need to really stand out more than anything in your song are your kick, your snare, your vocal, and your bass. Everything else needs to be there, but those things really are, at least currently, what people gravitate toward when they're listening to music. Those are the things that tend to grab people's attention, right? Vocals are always king. But then after that, the bass and the kick particularly are very important. People like that low end. So one thing, and a lot of times when people listen, they're not listening through like I'm listening through an expensive pair of speakers right now that I got for my studio so I could really hear everything well, right? But most people are not listening through speakers like that. They're listening to their cell phone, their laptop, their car stereo, whatever it is. Which, by the way, just a little plug for my speakers. I do use Wathen, Wathen, audiophile speakers. They are the best. They're great for recording. Also great for home theater. I use their inertia cubes. They're fantastic. Really great family company if you're looking for speakers for any application in your home and you want something more high fidelity. Highly, 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 highly recommend. Let me know. I can get you in touch with them. That being said, one thing I will do when I'm mixing is I will listen to what this sounds like in what's called mono, which means pretend that instead of listening to this through two speakers, you're listening to it through one, which is a lot of times the way people listen. Very rarely, again, are people listening in a perfect stereo environment. So I always check this to see when I'm listening to it in a mono setting, how does that sound, right? So I have this thing called the panipulator. What it does is I can switch it so that it sounds like this is in mono. And I don't know how well you're going to hear this over my phone microphone, but I'll play this for you so you can kind of hear what that does and kind of get a sense of the difference, right? So here I'll start in stereo, then I'll flip on the mono switch and you'll hear the difference. Let's take it from the verse. So that's stereo. Here's mono. Stereo. Mono. And listening in both of those settings, I could hear the bass and the kick very well. I could hear the snare well. The bass, I could probably bring up a hair. Again, I'm by no means done mixing, and also too, I'm going to get into doing some more what I would call pre-mastering, which is essentially going onto this channel where everything's running and doing like some EQs and compression and things of the overall track. You know, oftentimes I will master right in my session here. I don't always, especially if I'm just doing one song and not an album, I'll often just do the master right here on the mix bus. So we'll get into that later. Not today, probably. I actually have to jump off soon. I have some stuff to get done today, but anyway, I'm pretty happy with where we've gotten this track to so far. Actually, quite happy. And I'm really excited that y'all have been here on the journey with me, so to speak. It's definitely cool to share this stuff with other people and let people into the process. And if anyone has questions, answer questions. I mean, I enjoy that. And like I said before, it really is a pay it forward thing to me because that's how I learn. People were willing to show me stuff. And I definitely really, it makes me happy to be able to, even if it's just one person, you know, give some data to somebody that might help them do better with what they're doing musically, right? So cool. So like I said, I'm going to do a bounce of this. I'm going to call it probably it for today. The other thing too is if you spend too much time sitting at your computer listening to stuff and deliberating over it, that can start wearing on your ears, which is obviously not a good thing. So what I'm going to do is just do a bounce of this, and I'm going to bring it with me into my car and like listen to it a bunch and see what kind of things I hear. And that's the thing is important part of the mixing and mastering, especially process, is listening on like I don't do before I call something done, I always listen to it on like my car speakers, my car stereo, and I listen to it on I listen to it out of my cell phone. I listen to it out of my laptop because those are where people are going to be hearing it. And if it sounds good in those environments, it's going to sound good everywhere, is my theory. So I'll just bounce an MP3 of this. Another organization point is I always date my stuff. And that's just so that I know it's a point of reference for, oh, it's this one as opposed to that one, you know? What the heck day is today? It is, what the hell? Oh, it's the 12th, right. So good. Yeah, we're just going to do a little bounce of that. Biggity bam. All right, good. So I'm going to listen to this a bunch. I will come back on. I may or may not do some stuff on this before I'm on next. I do have lyrics written, and I already know what I'm going to do with the vocals, so I will probably do the vocals separately. I will not do that on here for two reasons. Again, A, because I'll be in the headphones, and you won't be able to hear the music while I'm doing the vocals. It'll be a little weird, but also I'm very self-conscious when I'm doing my vocals, so I tend to do those in an isolated way, just part of my creative process. But you will certainly hear the result of that. And when those are done, I will certainly share them with you and then do more on the mix. Possibly record a few more parts. I'm not sure. I need to do lead guitars as well. I'm going to do a little lead. I'm not going to go crazy on leads, but I am going to do something that I will probably do on a video as well, because that's just fun. And you can definitely hear what I'm doing with that. Like that'll be something that I can share with you. So anyway, guys, all right, well, that's it. I hope you guys have an incredible weekend, and I will see you on the next video. Peace.